Hi, I am Manohar, founder of CoachPro Consulting and PMI ATP instructor for the PMP certification training courses. Today we are going to discuss about stakeholder analysis and power and interest grid or power and interest matrix, especially for the purpose of stakeholder analysis. It is very important to do a stakeholder analysis, but before we get into the detail of a stakeholder analysis, let's understand first what is a stakeholder. A stakeholder is either an individual, group, or an organization that is impacted by the outcome of a project or a business venture. Stakeholders have an interest in the success of the project and can be within or outside of the organization that is sponsoring the project. Stakeholders are important because they can have a positive impact. They can also have a negative impact, influence on the project with their decisions. Please keep in mind that there are also critical or key stakeholders whose support is needed for the project to exist. If they don't support you, then there may be a situation that the project is being cancelled, project is being terminated. So let's try to understand what is a stakeholder. What are the types of a stakeholder? A stakeholder is a person like any other member of the project. But some stakeholders are easier to manage. They are approachable than others. So you have to learn how to manage those stakeholders, how to use stakeholder mapping techniques to identify the key stakeholders and ensure that they meet or you meet their requirements. There are different types of stakeholders. So broadly, stakeholders are categorized into two parts. We just discussed that stakeholders can be anyone with influence or anyone who can be influenced by the project. There can be many more stakeholders on the project. So all the stakeholders are broadly divided into two categories. First is internal stakeholders and the second is external stakeholders. Now let's talk about internal stakeholders. See, internal stakeholders are within the organization. Internal stakeholders are directly impacted by the project as they serve and are employed by the organization managing it. Internal stakeholders include employees, project managers, owners, the board of directors, investors, and etc. Then if we talk about the second categories of stakeholders, they are called external stakeholders. External stakeholders are outside the organization and are indirectly impacted, not directly impacted, indirectly impacted by the project. External stakeholders are influenced by the project or the organization managing the project, but are not the employees of the organization. External stakeholders may include suppliers. Suppose if your company is into the development of any kind of product, there might be some raw materials. So the suppliers are procuring those raw materials. So your suppliers are none other than external stakeholders. Your competitors, your customers, your clients, your creditors, society, government, intermediaries, all these are types of external stakeholders. Now, the key question for anyone who is managing a project is how should you manage a stakeholder on the project? Over the course of the project, one stakeholder might be more valuable in terms of project objections, and some might be demanding more attention than others. When you are building your project schedule, please make sure to define who those stakeholders are and at what point in project phase you might need to attend to them more. So, stakeholder mapping. Stakeholder mapping is very important here because stakeholders are important to the success of a project. Having good communications with stakeholders gives project managers much needed insight into the project, which helps them in multiple ways. Not just managing those stakeholders, not just managing their support during the project, but the communication, but the collaboration, but the customer feedback, stakeholders feedback. All these are very important aspects of the project and stakeholders. So how to manage, how to understand those stakeholders. So here stakeholder mapping plays a critical role. Stakeholder mapping is also a way to manage stakeholders' expectations. By mapping out your stakeholders, you know that how is your stakeholders stand in regards to the project. Hence, as the project is being executed, you as the project manager can incrementally deal with those expectations, bringing them in live project, within the project, so everyone is happy with the deliverables. Based on the power and interest of the stakeholders could be categorized into 4 categories. Based on the need, how to manage those stakeholders, their communications. So we'll draw a diagram. Let's draw a diagram. On the x-axis, plot power. On the y-axis, plot interest. If you see this diagram more closely, it can be further divided into 4 segments. Power may be low to high, and interest of those stakeholders may also be low to high. So if you see this, if you draw a line, one vertical line and horizontal line, there are 4 quadrants. First quadrant is monitor. So this quadrant falls under the stakeholders who falls under low power, low interest. So let's learn more about how to deal with those stakeholders who has low power and low interest. So the stakeholders who falls under low power, low interest, how you can manage them? You have to monitor them. They can be informed of any big changes or any steps which impacts the overall project. So to deal with the stakeholders who has low power, low interest, you just need to monitor them and keep them informed for any big changes, big decisions, big steps in regards to that project. Now the second stakeholders category comes under, let's take an example of high powered but low influence, low interest. And who are the stakeholders falls under this category? They are nothing but the end customer, end users. And what they need, how they can be managed? They need to be managed, they need to be informed. They need some updates on progress, but not too frequently. Okay, let's move on to the third types of stakeholders, which falls under low power but very high influence, very high interest in the project. How you can manage them? They need to be satisfied, which means you need to send them regular updates. That means you need to get their feedback and incorporate those feedback into the project. So this type of stakeholders need to be satisfied. Keep them satisfied by sending them regular updates, by taking their feedback. So if you compare second type and the third type, in this type the updates could be more frequently in compared to the second type of stakeholders who just need to be informed. And the fourth type of stakeholders falls under the categories who have high power and high interest, high influence. How to manage this kind of stakeholder? To manage these stakeholders and their expectations about the project, they are considered to be a key stakeholder. They are considered to be the decision makers on the project. That means you'll have to plan, you'll have to send them, you'll have to manage them very closely, you'll have to meet them very frequently, you'll have to share with them regular updates. Maybe every day you can have a kind of sync up call every day, so that you can share more insights, but not necessarily, depending on the need and the expectation from those stakeholders. But definitely the reporting, the sync up, the collaboration would be more frequently than any other types of stakeholders. But most importantly, their feedback. The stakeholders who falls under this fourth category, who has high power, high influence, you need to get their regular feedback, because their feedback is critical to any decision making into the project. I hope you understand the importance of power and influence, or power and interest greed, especially for the purpose of stakeholder analysis. If you like the video, please do like, comment, subscribe to our channel. Thank you.